Yeah. There we are. I can see a red button up.
Yeah.
So we are recording.
Yeah, it's on now.
Okay, great. Okay, so my name is Amelia Lyons, and I'm clinical supervisor trainer at the Aneurin Bevan Health Board. And I'm talking to Josie Williams about neurodiversity. And Josie, would you like to say something about your role in the health board?
Yeah, sure. So I currently work as a team lead within the health board in Aneurin Bevan, but also moving into a new high intensity psychological therapy role to pursue more therapeutic interventions.
Okay. And I thought it might be nice for people to understand, anyone who's listening to this interview, to understand how we know each other.
Mm-hmm.
And where we met. And so as I was thinking about this interview before today, well, in fact, this morning, I thought back to what I first remember about you, Josie. When we did that mindfulness course together for a
Yeah.
week,
Yeah.
and I sort of clearly remember you from that week, and I think that's when we sort of connected.
Yeah.
And the thing that absolutely stands out for me is, that cartoon that you drew
Mm-hmm.
at the end of the week, which sort of summarized the kind of the week in a way. You just did it naturally. And it was on a large piece of paper, and it was incredible. It was just, I remember feeling like how amazed and pleased really at that sort of the way that you'd sort of caught everything on that cartoon, and it just sort of struck me how sort of creative and talented you were and are, and how it just felt good knowing you in that way. I don't know what you remember about that week, or our connection, as it were.
Yeah, I think no, absolutely. It was an amazing week, wasn't it? It was I think it was an opportunity. It was a great opportunity, but obviously, yeah, amazing week to do this mindfulness course, but also a retreat encompassed in that. And I think
Yeah.
it gave me the opportunities, to really reflect and take time and be immersed really in what we were doing. And I think by doing that, drawing that picture of all the sort of our leaders, really, I suppose, our sort of
It
mindfulness
was funny.
practitioners, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
excellent.
and my representation really of seeing them in a more creative way
Yeah.
and fun way. But I think from doing that, Amelia, actually, I remember you saying to me how amazing, just like you've said now,
Yeah.
the drawing was. And to me, I was like, oh, I'm not sure that's really that amazing. And totally minimized, this, my sort of
Yeah.
drawing skill at the time. I even struggle with that even now saying it. But yeah, so it was great because actually from you voicing that, what that gave me was it gave me a real sense of being seen and being heard, or just being visible in a world where very often I feel invisible. So sort of somebody actually seeing my inner self rather than just what my external self. So my connection to you was very strong in that moment.
Yeah, and I think that's right. I think that what that shows is there's a sort of I guess a mutual appreciation really of our abilities between us, that I'm able to sometimes see things in people that aren't easily recognizable, and that you felt seen and appreciated in that way as well, for really real talent
Yeah.
that you've got. um Okay, and we both work as professionals in the sort of counselling psychotherapy sort of era, don't we? In Aneurin Bevan, so that is part of what we do as well. So so on the supervision program, which we've talked about and which you've participated in, we thought we'd look at the subject of neurodiversity, and you and I have had some long conversations really about the degree to which the course is aimed at the neurodiverse and a bit with a view to improving it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I think it's the inclusivity, isn't it? It's really raising our own awareness, raising others' awareness, increasing acceptance to the difference, and making sure that we are adapting and flexing to the inclusivity really of it being involved.
Yeah, well put. Thank you, Josie. I was losing my words then because I was trying to sort of sort the slide out, and but yes, that's right. And I think one of the things that, and I'm also thinking about a generational thing, I'm quite aware, I guess, of my age now, which is now, over 60, and thinking, well, there are professionals who are sort of in their 50s and 60s, and they won't be that up to date with terms.
Sure.
And things like that. So what I wanted to do was make a bit of a series of stuff on diversity where we get bang up to date with what's going on out there, because, I might have considered myself a fairly inclusive person 30 years ago when I went out to work. But now, and in terms of reading between then and now, what is it that I need to be more aware of, really? And I hope that in asking those questions, that might be helpful for other professionals as well. So you can see the question on the slides there, and maybe it's also worth saying about how we put the slides together, which is, that I had the series of slides of the questions on the presentation, and that you've sort of taken them and adapted that. Do you want to say something about putting it together before we address those questions?
Yeah, sure. So so I think from the questions you had suggested, I felt that it was, for me, again, really important to add in a bit of a structure. Structure always helps, keeps me on track, if no one else. But when we're thinking about neurodiversity, structure is really helpful. And if we're talking about something that we're very passionate about, then we can veer off and continue and be quite fixated. So I think structure is really helpful. I think I wanted to, make it a bit more creative, bring in my creative mind and my creative skill, really, of seeing things slightly differently. So not just having the words on the page, but also having some kind of relatable or associative pictures too.
Yeah. No, thank you, Josie. So this is very much a joint effort, isn't it?
Yeah.
In that sense. So then, sort of thinking about our terms, if we start off first of all with our terms, can you explain what the term neurodiversity means to somebody who's over 50, match of the day watcher, what it includes and excludes, and why is it important to have an awareness about it and the implications, and kind of roughly what size of population are we also talking about in that? So perhaps you can give us a sort of sense of that.
Yeah, sure. So the word neurodiversity, the best way of really describing it is splitting it into two. So neuro being brain, and diversity definition really is difference. To put it into a slightly different term, I like to use more descriptive ways of describing things, or like a metaphor or something like that. And a way of saying or describing neurodiversity is if it's a bit like, well, our brains are all different, or they can be, just like our fingerprints. So it's a bit like our blueprint. Our brain blueprint is like our fingerprint blueprint. So some of us might have brains that are similar, and then we would be linking then to a term of being neurotypical. So we might have more of us that have a brain that's much more similar in how it works, with the pathways of social or word processing, managing environments. And some of us may have a slightly different brains. So some of those processes in our brains will be slightly different. And so in terms, slowly through the years, what has that included and excluded? Really, actually what has happened is that we've had diagnoses or labels, as some people might call them, but really it's just an understanding. How can we try and understand and support someone who has a different brain or a difference in their brain? And so I suppose quite early on, autism was identified, and ADHD has been identified, but there's lots of differences now that are coming in, and so these brains are being researched and analysed, which is great. And so we're recognising dyslexia, dyspraxia, dyscalculia. There's lots of other neuro differences that lots of us may have, and so we may not have sort of one diagnosis, we may have multiple diagnoses. So the lovely Judy Singer, who is a sociologist, she in the 1900s, she sort of brought in this idea of neurodivergence, and neurodivergent people and neurodiversity. She brought in that term.
Yeah. So it's a large umbrella, really, that includes, like, for example, when I was at university teaching, we used to talk about people who are dyspraxic, dyslexic, yes, on the spectrum sort of thing. And so what you're saying is that neurodiversity is an umbrella term, really, for all of that.
Yeah. Definitely. Yeah. And it's interesting, as in, the research is still going on at this time, and as it does, it evolves, and we're still finding more and more differences. So well, I suppose we'll come on to that a bit later, but there's current debates around that.
But sort of letting the conversation unfold a bit naturally as well, what it makes me think is, so we've got a lot of differences, really. So the pragmatic teacher brain in me is thinking, so how are we going to manage to manage all of those differences then? So I don't know what your intuitive response is to that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think straight away I'd be thinking it's a challenge. It is, for somebody in that type of profession, with a large group of brains, if we're going to go neurologically, absolutely, it's a challenge. Although there are some very simple, helpful sort of top tips, really, that I think could be implemented, and especially when we're thinking about the supervision course.
All right, super duper. So I don't get off lightly then.
No. I think the only thing I didn't touch just then, I have to apologise, I think, was just the actual thinking about statistics, actually. So if we go back, if we go back to the percentage. So at the moment, the World Health Organization they're looking at the sort of stats, really, and they're suggesting that there's a proportion of us, 1 in 7. People who have a significant neuro difference that would be recognised right now, maybe within a sort of a diagnostic process.
Yes, and that makes me recall statistics that our art department did when I was working in a college, where they had 25% of the artists were classified as sort of in the dyslexia sort of field, 25%. So big percentage there.
Big percentage, and mainly men or boys, are diagnosed much easier, as they tend to be much more external with their presentation, whereas females tend to not be as easily diagnosed.
Yes, okay. So then let us move on then to the next in our slides, which is about yourself, because obviously there was a reason that you and I started talking about this, and there's, it's of particular interest to yourself, although from the statistics that you've just been saying, it's of particular interest to quite a lot of people, actually. But something about sharing about in your personal experience that you've had in this area that you think informs your practice from yourself or people close to you, that might make you hold back a bit, and sort of general reflections. So
sure, yeah. So so when so I have 3 children, but my son
Yeah.
really struggled in school, but from a very young age. So from nursery age, not just school age. And he was really labelled as the naughty child that couldn't listen, couldn't sit still. No point in, I had lots of comments being thrown at me. No point in teaching him because he doesn't want to listen. He's not interested.
How disheartening.
Yeah,
Yeah.
really tough. Really tough, actually. And to the extent, actually, that he was almost ostracized, by his peers because he was very disruptive. And parents would also do the same to me, when I was picking up from school. So it was really challenging. And I just couldn't work this stuff out. I couldn't understand what was going on for him. When I sort of saw professionals at that time, so we're talking, this is sort of 25 years ago.
Yeah.
So when I saw professionals at the time, it was much more then at that time blamed on parents as such. You're not parenting in the right way. My husband worked away from home, so there was a comment of, well, it's just you. Perhaps he's missing his dad.
How
you hate.
patronising.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
A child needs both parents for discipline, all those lots and lots of comments. Yeah, really challenging. So I was asked to go on lots of parenting courses and sort of really work this stuff out and try and understand his own behaviour. And as he grew older and sort of went through the school system, he just struggled more and more. And then his behaviour was disobedient behaviour. He found rules really hard to understand or stick to. Struggled to make friends. And anyway, it just went on and on.
Yes.
And it was never recognised until he had this one teacher. And I think it was still primary school at this stage. He was sort of year 5 or 6 maybe in the juniors. And this one teacher keyed into him to his interest. Now, he loves sport. In fact, sports day was his favourite day of school. But this teacher keyed in and recognised he liked his sport, and he motivated him with tasks, with rewarding him with the teacher bringing in his old rugby magazines, and said, look, if you do this today, if you manage to complete this task, I'm going to let you have one of my magazines for 15 minutes in the quiet corner, and I'll do that, and I'll bring new magazines in, see how you get on. And that type of motivation is what he needed, and he needed someone to recognize him for what his interests were.
Yeah.
And it worked.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that teacher left, and then sadly his difficult journey continued. He's now 28 now, coming up, and ultimately, unfortunately left school with no grades except PE. Actually, he did have A star in PE. Everything else he didn't attend, or didn't manage to sit long enough to complete the exam, or there was lots of things going on for him where he struggled. But he's now, yes, a regional manager of a construction company, and is doing very well, very successful, has his own house, has a fantastic relationship, and also in that time became a semi-professional rugby player. So, it's interesting where he's come from, but where he's at now.
So we can see the contrast there of where he's come from, and obviously sport provided a bridge there, it sounds like, for him to sort of engage within society in a way where it was a mutually beneficial relationship. I'm also making the connection, actually, with us talking. Are you making that connection too? Something about being recognized and understood in a way. And that happened with that teacher for him in that way, and between us two.
Definitely parallel process.
Great, isn't it? It's great stuff, this. So do you want to say more about what enabled that, him to sort of step over that bridge, or do you want to leave that to the rest of the interview in that sense? Because what you've given us then is a picture of a really tough time that you had sort of growing up, and then the picture now, which is, so we've got two pictures in the photo album there, the middle bit. Do you want to share a bit more about that now, or are you waiting for a latter slide to sort of mention that?
No, yeah,
What was the breakthrough, basically?
yeah, so yeah, absolutely. So the breakthrough realistically, I think, was was his sport, which is what you've touched on,
Yeah,
because the sport allowed him to move, he didn't have to sit still. He had simple tasks. When it came to understanding gameplay, it was drawn out on whiteboards, so visually he was seeing what he was being asked to do, not just being asked to do. He learnt his position very quickly. He actually also again was motivated by tasks. So naturally, you're motivated when you're playing a game of sport. You're motivated to win. You want to
get the thing over the line.
That's it. Achieve, whether get a try or a goal or whatever it may be. So and the reward and the sense of reward and connection and sense of belonging in a team, that you get from playing a good game or achieving in a game. Again, from the coach, a coach, that's what a coach wants. So straight away, they see you for your positive attributes, for your skill.
Right, the talent that he had.
Yeah, he had so much energy.
Yeah.
He played a full game, and still to this day plays a full game every game. And he plays in a position where actually it's a very exhausting position, but he's like, the coaches just couldn't believe that he could keep going. It's like, where's he getting his energy from?
Okay.
So he was really recognised, but with his skill and his positive attributes, what he brought, and so that drove him, and he recognised that then for himself.
Okay, Josie. Now, if we could just take a break at this point, as we agreed.
Yeah.
And then I will be back to see you shortly. So we'll leave the meeting running, but you could stop recording, and I'll be back as